Welcome to all my fellow Christian creatives out there. This is Tim Risto, host of the Creative Christians podcast, welcoming you to another episode of AfterThoughts here on YouTube. AfterThoughts is my vlog series where I talk about thoughts that I've had after making an episode of the podcast, usually tied into some topic or area of interest related to the last podcast episode or leading into the next podcast episode. This is my weekly vlog series. I've been doing it about 4 weeks now, so almost a month, and try and put them out every Tuesday. Today it's coming out on Wednesday, but trying to offer you all some updated thoughts and just some brief discussions on various things related to Christian creatives and the Creative Christians podcast. So let's launch off today. First up, if you have not yet voted in the Pick the Topic vote for Creative Christians, head on over to my Instagram page at creative_Christians and look for the Pick the Topic graphic, and in the comments there, vote on which topic you would like. I've got 3 topics available that I'm considering for the next episode to tackle, to take on, to address, and I'm letting you all listeners pick which one it should be. So the first one is faith-based films. The second one is most creative books of the Bible, creative. And third is AI tools for Christian creatives. As of today, Wednesday, September 13th, the day of this recording, we are in a tie for number 1 and number 2. Number 1, faith-based films, and number 2, most creative books of the Bible are in a dead heat tie at the moment. So that's where we're at. Number 3, the AI tools for Christian creatives is trailing quite a bit behind. Surprisingly, I thought that might one actually that one might rank a little higher with people, but you never know. And there's still time. I'm going to take votes through Friday of this week, so through the end of the day on September 15th. So you got time. Head on over to the Instagram page, or you can vote here on YouTube too, in the comments with this video, whether you want 1, 2, or 3. So let me know, and I will dig into that topic for the next episode of the Creative Christians podcast. Speaking of faith-based films, let's go ahead and take a quick look at that this week. I wanted to bring you a little bit of an update on the movie Sound of Freedom, which I discussed in the current episode of my Creative Christians podcast, the Inspiration episode. Talked a little bit about that, and it looks like we may be talking more about that in an upcoming episode, as it looks like the faith-based films and Pick the Topic vote's doing pretty well. Since this movie is still currently in theaters and is still a topic of interest out there, still a current film going on, it's kind of fun to keep up with it and how it's doing. So I want to take a quick look at this article from the Washington Examiner. It came out here on September 9th. Headline is, Sound of Freedom is number 1 movie in Latin America. It's by Heather Hamilton from the Washington Examiner. And, the film, of course, has been strictly in the U.S., strictly domestically for the majority of its run, but it recently went worldwide. I forgot how many countries it's in, 12 countries or something like that, maybe a little bit more than that even. Finally released globally. And, so they were curious to see how numbers would do there. So let's take a look at this article. Sound of Freedom took the top spot in Latin America's box office over the opening weekend. Angel Studios, the distributor of Sound of Freedom, told the Washington Examiner that the independent film attracted nearly 2 million viewers across 18 Latin American countries. That's pretty darn good. We're seeing packed theaters, standing ovations, widespread enthusiasm, and strong word of mouth from Buenos Aires to Mexico City, to Bogota, to Caracas, Lima, and beyond, Jared Giese, Angel Studios' chief distribution officer, said. We set a goal of reaching 2 million in advance ticket sales, which took a full week in the U.S., and reached that goal in just 4 days in Latin America. Okay, so that's kind of a good measurement when you can go worldwide and get numbers, faster than in the U.S., which seems to be the case with a lot of films these days. They're doing better globally in many ways, or reaching goals quicker sometimes than in the U.S. But it took just 4 days in Latin America. And again, being the topic that it is about child trafficking, that kind of says something there too. Very interesting. Sound of Freedom details the true story of how former Homeland Security agent Tim Ballard quit his DHS job and risked his life to journey into the jungles of Colombia in an effort to save children from slavery. Got to be careful with the language here on YouTube. Child trafficking. The film features Jim Caviezel from The Passion of the Christ, Academy Award winner Mira Sorvino from Mighty Aphrodite, and Bill Camp from 12 Years a Slave. I have to admit, I didn't realize Bill Camp was in 12 Years a Slave. And he's phenomenal in this movie. I need to look more up about him. I'm not as familiar with him perhaps as I should be, but he's just great in this film. The film was produced by Eduardo Verastegui, I probably don't have that pronounced right, and was written and directed by Alejandro Monteverde. Angel Studios is celebrating success across multiple international audiences. The film took the #1 box office spot in New Zealand. It came in #2 in Australia and South Africa, and #4 in the United Kingdom. Sound of Freedom also shocked the domestic box office by earning nearly $20 million and taking the #3 spot in its opening weekend earlier this summer. In the 9 weeks since hitting theaters on July 4th, the film has earned nearly $183 million domestically and more than $190 million worldwide. It's pretty amazing. If we look at the numbers now, Sound of Freedom domestically, 183.1, almost 0.2 million here in the United States. And then international, 27.5 million. So for a total worldwide of $210.7 million. And it's not done yet, so I assume it could still earn a little bit more internationally and bump those numbers up more. Maybe this thing could get to 220 potentially. I don't know how much longer they plan on keeping it in the worldwide market, our international box office, but maybe it could bump it up a little bit more. We'll see. It is getting ready to be released digitally and streaming. Here behind me, I've got Apple TV up. It is up for pre-order on Apple TV for $19.99. It looks like they don't have a date on the release yet. Usually they have a date right here above the pre-order, and I don't see that listed yet. But looking over on here at the direct, Sound of Freedom gets online release date. This is by David Thompson from August 22nd. Let's see here. Angel Studios, Sound of Freedom has been given an imminent digital release online. Let's see. Here we go. Sound of Freedom will reportedly be available to purchase on digital platforms on September 15th, according to When to Stream. And today's the 13th. So if this article's correct and current, up to date, then this Friday, 2 days from the day I'm recording this video, it will release. Probably Apple TV, I assume, is going to be available then, although they don't have the date up there. It's listed for $19.99 there on Apple TV. Actually, last night when I was checking this out, it was $14.99, so I guess I missed the window on the $14.99 price. But highly recommend, if you haven't seen the movie, any of you have and want to own it digitally, should be available here this week, it looks like. No word on a physical release yet. And for those of us like me who are big physical media fans, I love Blu-rays and 4K Blu-rays. I'd love to own that. But I'll probably double dip on this film since it's just so good. So I'll get a digital. And then if the physical release comes out, that will also be on my list of things to purchase. But good film. Usually it comes out on digital for ownership about a month before releasing for streaming. So it probably wouldn't be till mid-October you could stream it on potentially maybe Netflix or other streaming sites. Not sure where, what Angel Studios distribution will allow them for this film or how that all works out, but we'll update you on that coming up in the future. But good film to keep an eye on, really well done movie. We'll talk about it more again on the podcast as well. But just some interesting tidbits thought I'd share with you today here on Afterthoughts. Faith-based films, I think, are going to see a resurgence because of Sound of Freedom. And I know there are those who will say, Sound of Freedom really isn't a faith-based film. It's an inspirational film. Or, we'll play semantics a little bit with that. But as I discussed briefly in the podcast inspiration episode, it is a faith-based film on a couple levels, even though it is not overtly about, something faith-specific per se, or something churchy or religious or to that effect, or about prayer or things of that necessarily. Not so much in the way that like the Kendrick brothers films are, who have done, Courageous and Fireproof and Facing the Giants and all those. They wear their faith on their sleeve in their films. There's nothing wrong with that. Just a different approach, where this one is about a different topic entirely with child trafficking, but it does have faith embedded in it, and it is a core part of many of the characters. So again, there's that whole fascinating dimension there that we can talk about more in the future too. But great film. Check it out. Coming to digital and likely coming to streaming after that. Hopefully we'll get a 4K release for us physical media fans. Anyway, that's all I got today for Afterthoughts. Just wanted to give you a few brief updates on Sound of Freedom. And we'll see you next time. Have a great week. Bye-bye.